Well, the reason I'm running for president is that government is too big, too bossy, too nosy, too intrusive. And the worst part is they usually end up hurting the very people they're trying to help. And we haven't seen any changes in the past few years. And I tell voters that you know best what's best for you, not the federal government. Well, first we bring the troops home. There's no reason for us to be in 150 countries around the world, and we spend more than the next 7 countries combined. So we need to go back to protecting our borders. We need to keep our country safe. And what's ironic is that being everywhere around the world just makes us less safe. All we have to do is look at 9/11 and see how that made things worse. Because I'm trying to reach out to all Americans. And I have heard people say, well, this is a wasted vote. I would suggest that if you live in Idaho and you voted for Trump, and you voted for Trump because you wanted to cut the debt, you wanted to cut the deficit, you wanted to cut the spending, you wanted to bring the troops home, all those things he promised that he didn't do. I would say that you're probably a little unhappy right now, and voting for Trump again would be a wasted vote because this is a very red state. It hasn't gone blue in decades, and so I would say vote for the Libertarian to send Trump a message that, you know what, we want you to do what we put you in office to do. You said you were going to be a businessman, come in from the outside world, not be a professional politician, but you're acting like a professional politician anyway. So vote for the real outsider, which would be me. Oh, sure. Now, if we could get me on the debate stage and people could actually hear our message, then there'd be a possibility of my winning. But as long as the media is keeping us out, as long as we're not on that debate stage, then there's no way for people to know about us. But I'm hoping that in the states I do go to, they see, wow, there really is a choice. And you know what? I do want to send a message. I want them to know that I understand economics and I understand that we do not have a free market healthcare system. And if we went to a free market healthcare system, such as the state of Indiana, who instituted a partial free market system, and Singapore, if we did what they did, our costs would go down dramatically. That when politicians say that they want to have Medicare for all, that what they're really saying is VA hospital for all. The top-down monopoly just does not work. Oh, absolutely. And we're not going to make it more accessible by having a big monopolistic system, which I question anyway, because so many people on the left do not like monopolies in the private world, and yet they're okay with a monopoly in the government world. And a government monopoly isn't going to serve its customers any better than a corporate monopoly would. And all we have to do is look to England and Canada to see that it is just not working. Why not look at a country where it does work, which is Singapore? So here, a heart bypass costs about $130,000. In Singapore, it costs $18,000. So why don't we go to a system like that rather than one that doesn't work? Because somebody has to for this country, because we are headed down the path of socialism. We are headed towards where government controls everything. And I think with these mask laws, I think Americans are finally beginning to realize, you know what, this isn't the America I thought we were. I thought America was the freest country in the world, and yet here we are all under lockdown, we're all under house arrest, we're all having to wear masks without any choice. And what's ironic is one of my grandparents, my grandfather is from Sweden, and his family came to this country for freedom, and yet Sweden never locked down. They continued to go shopping, they continued going to restaurants, and they continued to send their kids to school. Meanwhile, supposedly the country, the land of the free, we're under lockdown, so that's just rather ironic. Oh, they completely mishandled it. The first thing Trump should have done months ago, in the very beginning, was get rid of the FDA obstacles. And I said how government usually hurts the very people they're trying to help. The FDA is just one example of many. So there were dozens, literally dozens of testing kits that we could have used in our country to test our citizens. And yet the FDA blocked all of them except for 2 in the beginning. Meanwhile, we look over around the world, especially in Southeast Asia, they were getting ahead ahead of the curve because they were testing people. So there are still testing kits that we're not allowed to use. So President Trump should have gotten the FDA out of the way so that we could have been tested. And then we know who needs to stay home and who can go out and work. And then also he stood on the stage with Dr. Fauci and said, if you don't have symptoms, don't get tested. Well, that's the opposite approach to take, because even then we knew that many people have the virus and have no symptoms at all. So we need to test everybody, because if somebody doesn't have symptoms, that person could be out spreading it. So by testing everybody, then again, we don't have to all stay home wearing our masks. What it would mean for the country is choice, that people can send their kids to the schools they want. People can choose the health care they want. People can choose a retirement that is not basically a Ponzi scheme, that people would be put in control of their own lives. And I tell people, you know best what's best for you, not the people in Washington, not the lobbyists and bureaucrats. And I think people would actually love to go back. And we'd see a lot less partisanship. Right now, people ask me, why is the country so polarized? Well, it's because we've got to go to the ballot box for everything. So let's say with masks, right now Trump is telling schools that they need to wear, or that Trump's need to, or I'm sorry, right now Trump is saying that schools need to reopen. Well, we've got 50 different states with many different needs and issues, and the needs of the people in rural Appalachia much different than the needs of downtown New York City, and very different from the needs of people in Idaho. So why not let each individual locality make their own decisions? Because education is local. It should be decided among parents, teachers, and students instead of a one-size-fits-all from the federal government. So right now, if you want to send your kid to a school or bring your kid home, keep your kid home from school, basically you battle it out at the ballot box, as opposed to with the libertarian world, you don't everybody go to the ballot box in November and vote for one way of doing it, one size fits all that doesn't really fit all. What we say is vote with your feet or vote with your dollars, where you keep your resources, and then you decide what kind of school you want to send your kids to. You decide what kind of health care you want, as opposed to the people in Washington deciding that for you. Yeah, I would say we've heard the media call them two rich old white guys. And I would add to that, both people want to spend more of your money. Both people want to make your decisions. Neither one's going to bring the troops home, and neither one is going to do anything about the crushing health care debt. So if you really want an alternative, I'm the only alternative to what we have right now. Well, what's funny is we were complaining about how big government was back then, and now it's gotten even bigger. Our debt is 5 times the debt we were complaining about in 1996. And here's something that I noted that was interesting. Back in the early 90s, we were complaining about how the Congress people got a free barber shop, how the taxpayers paid for their haircuts, and everybody was appalled. And what's ironic now is, after seeing that videotape of Nancy Pelosi, now what we have is not just that taxpayers have to pay for their haircuts, but we're not even allowed to go to the salon to get our haircut, and yet the Congress people are. So once again, it's Animal Farm all over again, with some people more equal than others, and an elite few passing rules that they don't have to follow. So they don't have to follow the rules that they pass for the rest of us. I would get somebody who understands the Constitution. And I think Alan Dershowitz would be a great choice. He calls himself a proud Hillary supporter on the one hand, and yet he defended Donald Trump, saying that he should not be impeached. So we've got somebody who, at least from the outset, appears to be impartial. I would look at Judge Napolitano, and there are also many others. I do have a list of them. I love the United States because it still is one of the freest countries on earth. And 3 of my grandparents are immigrants. And when I was young, my grandmother would tell me how great this country is, how you could start your own business, you could work 2 extra jobs, you can, just try to better yourself. Whereas in the old country, the government basically took all the money, so everybody had the same that was left. And what's interesting is she's not from the Soviet Union, she's from Denmark. And unfortunately, we're headed towards Denmark. And I don't want to go back to the country that my grandmother left. I want to keep the country, the vision that she had in America, that we're all free to work and live how we want to, make our own decisions and spend our own money. Well, I think it's unfortunate what's going on, and the federal government, I think, has been helping to ramp this up by handing out tanks and tear gas and free training and other money to local police departments so that they no longer look like local police departments. We need to keep the federal government out of it and have the federal government come in when it's needed and when the states request it. Because if you ask the average person, do you want your taxes raised so that we can buy a tank for our police department? I think most people would say no. But instead, the federal government takes our money, spends it in ways we don't want, and then we feel obligated to take the tank, the free tank, because we don't want the people in Alabama or Wyoming to get it, because we figure that's our money. Well, first of all, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in a small town north of Chicago. We only had one stoplight, and I would literally walk through a cornfield to go to school. So I am from a solid middle-class background, and I point to Joe Biden, who, the idea of a citizen statesman, we're supposed to elect people to go to Washington, serve for a couple months, and then go back home and live under our rules. Joe Biden's been in office for 47 years. I don't think he's ever had to live under a law he passed because, again, they're above the laws. They pass laws that they don't have to follow. I, on the other hand, I'm a small-town girl, and I have lived under the laws, and I do realize that's what we need to return to. That we're ecstatic that from the very beginning, about 75% of our volunteers have been from outside the party. So a lot of people say they are tired of the two-party system. And I would like to mention my website is jo20.com. That's jo20.com for anybody who's interested.